Unistellar turns its focus to smart binoculars. Welcome back to Techstination. I'm Fred Fishkin. With us is Dr. Franck Marchis, SETI Institute Senior Planetary Astronomer and co-founder at Unistellar, Chief Science Officer there.
Hi, how are you, Fred?
Terrific. Give us some background to start with about this really innovative company, Unistellar.
Well, Unistellar started in 2015. I joined the company as a co-founder in 2017. At the time, we were building a prototype of our digital smart telescope. We used to call it the Frankenstein telescope because it was truly a prototype. It looked like nothing, but he had the capability of the project we had in mind in 2017. End of 2017, we did a Kickstarter. We raised more than $2 million on the Kickstarter, and we basically started hiring employees to develop the final product called at the time the EV-scope, the Enhanced Vision Telescope. We delivered the first one in 2019. It was a big challenge to be able to manufacture 2,000 telescopes. In fact, that was the Kickstarter at the time, and then we have released different versions of the EV-scope. We have the EV-scope 2 with better sensors, and then we release Equinox, which are the same than the EV-scope but without the eyepiece, so a lower price. And in January, we released Odyssey range, which is a completely different one because they're smaller, more compact, and you can carry them in a tiny backpack. But they're still as powerful and them significantly easier to use. So the company goal is basically to make astronomy accessible by creating a telescope that people can use easily, even without knowing anything about astronomy.
So step us through, before we get into the binoculars, step us through how it's used and how it's so different from other kinds of telescopes.
Well, it's relatively simple to use because, first of all, when you buy the telescope, you can buy it in plenty of places. Now, I'm not going to promote that, but you receive it, you have a very simple documentation, you download an app with your phone, and you connect your app to the telescope. The telescope emulate is on Wi-Fi, basically. And then you can control the telescope with your app. So that's really the reason for which it's very easy. So the telescope emulate is on Wi-Fi. You connect your app to the Wi-Fi, your phone to the Wi-Fi, you launch the app, and then the app will basically guide you. So because the telescope is a digital telescope, it has a sensor, and the sensor allow collect data, observations, frames, and knowing the location, the time with the phone, and knowing basically recognizing the pattern in the sky, the telescope point itself, align itself. And then it gives you a list of targets you can observe. So we have some very easy target that we encourage people to observe first, of course, like bright galaxy, bright nebulae. And as the time goes, you can go to the list of fainter and fainter and more challenging targets. You see an image, which is a process image, meaning that the telescope takes short exposure and stack them slowly, removing aberration, imperfections, the background due to the city light, for instance, remove frames when there is a vibration. It's kind of automatic and semi-intelligent because it recognizes by itself when the frames is good or bad, and then it stacks them. So creating a long exposure from a lot of short exposure. So you reach a sensitivity equivalent like if you had a 1 meter class telescope in your backyard. I don't want to enter into the technical details, but we have demonstrated that we reach the magnitude, the sensitivity of a telescope as big as 1 meter with our telescope in less than 5 minutes from cities. So this powerful telescope is basically used for people to observe galaxy, nebulae, comets, receive notification when something happens in the sky. So that's also the main point here is that we created a telescope that we want people to use. The best telescope is not the most powerful, the bigger one. The best telescope is a telescope that people use often. So by sending notification of our app, letting people know when there is a new comet, a new supernova, something happening in the sky, a celestial event, it's something beautiful that we think people will want to watch, we have this amateur astronomer, we call them citizen astronomer, taking the telescopes out and observe it. So for instance, for the eclipse in the United States in April, we have more than 1,000 people who observe it using our telescope. So that was a big number, but that's the power of this network.
Just terrific. And you make it simple for people too, using the app to get out there and just try it out. And find the things that they would want to look at. So now let's go move over to the binoculars for a bit. Give us an overview of what you are doing here and why binoculars.
Why binocular? What are we doing? So we always been thinking about how to make astronomy more accessible. But telescopes are great, but they are generally more complex to use. And most people enjoy the dark sky by looking with naked eyes. And the easy path is to use binoculars. I mean, most kids have used binocular in their life. It's easy. You observe birds or trees and then the moon. So binocular is more accessible than a telescope. So in this idea, we've been brainstorming about how we could make astronomy, or how we could create a binocular which includes some of the technology we have developed for our telescopes, and even beyond that. So these Envision binoculars that we just announced is an augmented reality binocular. It will basically guide the people so they know how to use their binocular in a better way. The idea we have is that it could be used during the day and during the night. So during the day, you will be able to use your binocular to observe the landscape, and it will give you information about what you're observing. The name of the peaks, for instance, if there is path, and so on. So the augmented reality will add this information on the top of what you are seeing with your naked eye. We are having as well, for the observation by night, you will be able to connect you up to the binocular, and you could select an object like we do with our telescope, and the binocular will have a sensor that will tell you where to go until you find this object. So you're looking for the Orion Nebula, you choose the Orion Nebula on your app, you click, and then the binocular will basically guide you and until you find the Orion Nebula. The advantage of that, this technology is simpler than a telescope, and you see with your naked eyes. You see truly the photons coming from the Orion Nebula. We have some other idea that we are thinking about. Something I really like is what we call the shareable target lock mode. So imagine you're observing something day or night, whatever. You find something that you really like and you want other people to see it. You probably have done that. And you give the binocular and the person try desperately to see what you have seen, but they cannot because they never know where exactly you pointed. With this binocular, you'll be able to lock a position, a location, give the binocular to someone, and this person will be able to go back to where you were observing and see what you were observing. Like you see a bird, you see an animal, you see a plant, a comet, whatever. You share this information to people around you. So it's like an interactive way of observing the sky or observing the outdoor.
Are you also taking photographs, images using binoculars?
This binocular will not have the potential to take photograph. That's not the goal at the moment.
Because you can't stack or
No.
layer the photos as you can with the telescope that's mounted.
Exactly. It will be a naked eye system. It will be an experience that you share with people. Maybe we will work on something like this in the future, but for the moment, that's not something we have in the pipe. It may come.
Very, very interesting. So when do you expect to be shipping these? And can you give us some info on the pricing?
So the pricing will be 900 roughly. We are planning to do a Kickstarter, the DNA of Unistellar. That's the way we started Unistellar. So we will do a Kickstarter in the upcoming months. We're hoping to offer at lower cost, the binocular through our Kickstarter. So typically $600 or something like that. Maybe right now we are in the range of 1,000 units that we could manufacture in the next 10 years, next 2 years, sorry. So that's the idea. That's the goal. We are, of course, we're still working on that. We have our industrial partners on the details of the timeline the timeline for the manufacturing and delivery, and this will come as the Kickstarter progress. The Kickstarter will last for months, so it will be very short. And I don't know if you know the story, but when we started the Kickstarter, when we did our Kickstarter for our telescope, we had 150 telescopes at something like $1,200 or something like this. And then we have a lot of telescope at 2,000, 1,500 and 2,000. And the first one disappeared in 2 minutes. In 2 minutes, people got them. We thought it was a bug in the system, to be honest, because we were so surprised. In 2 minutes, the 150 low-cost telescope were gone. So we're hoping it will be the same interest for this binocular, because I think we are targeting through something that people wanted to have been always wanted to see. I mean, modernizing binocular, it's something that nobody have done apparently. So we are trying to do that now with this Envision binoculars.
Tell us a little bit about your background, Frank, and your work with SETI. It's fascinating.
Yeah, I'm an astronomer. I've been working in astronomy for the past 25 years. I've basically been developing instruments on the large 8-10 meter class telescopes, like the Keck telescope and so on, using adaptive optic systems. And in 2017, I've basically joined Unistellar as the chief science officer. I brought the scientific component of the telescope, we in partnership with the SETI Institute, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. Our nonprofit organization is dedicated to the search for life elsewhere in the galaxy and the universe, but we also have a very strong outreach and education program. So that's the reason we partner with Unistellar in 2017, because for us, having a telescope like the Unistellar telescope, it's important so people enjoy and observe again the dark sky. So that was my motivation for joining Unistellar, to truly make a telescope that people will use and to do scientific observations. Something I did not mention is that these telescopes are also linked to our network at SETI Institute. So if you get one, you also can participate to scientific campaigns. So for instance, there is a new comet and we want to observe the activity of this comet, like comet A3 at the moment. We have like more than 100 people observing it every week. So that means we can basically measure the brightness of this comet, and we detected that it's not as bright as it's supposed to be. Something is happening there. So this comet may not be the comet of the decade in September or October, probably because it's more dusty than made of gas. We have this kind of idea. We are publishing a paper in the next 6 months about that. We have done we have discovered recently, confirmed the discovery of an exoplanet, which was detected by the TESS mission. And using our telescope, people basically confirmed a second transit and confirmed the existence of this exoplanet. We published a paper in Nature with our citizen astronomers on the impact of the DART mission. People observe it. We're the only group who published the observation live of this impact. Hubble Space Telescope, James Webb Space Telescope missed it. We detected it with our small telescopes. Why? Because we have telescopes everywhere in the world. And this was visible in the south of Africa. So people in Réunion Islands, Seychelles, Kenya, South Africa observe it. So this telescope is more than a telescope to observe galaxy and nebulae. For the SETI Institute, is a tool to do citizen science and to contribute meaningfully to the exploration of the universe.
Wow. And where do the telescope prices start today? I know you have the
So we have the Equinox 2 at 2,500, the Odyssey without the eyepiece at 2,500, and then we have the Area Range, we have the Odyssey Pro at 4,000 and the Eviscope 2 at 5,000 something right now. There is $400 off for the Father Day at the moment. So if people want to get one, that's the right time. Yeah, it's a telescope that it's more than a telescope too. We change the software regularly. So an example, in April, we had this eclipse again. We had one annular eclipse last year. I don't know if you remember that. I went to observe it in Oregon. It was completely cloudy. But some people observe it. We have a telescope, and because we install a solar mode. So it worked well, but they kind of lost the sun during the eclipse because, of course, it's a different configuration. The telescope software was enabled to understand what he was observing. So our engineer worked on implemented a very stable solar mode, so we can also observe an eclipse. So people observed the eclipse using our telescope in April, and it worked for 2 hours. They did not lose the sun even during the totality. And they even saw the corona surrounding the and some prominences around the sun. So that was very a success. And what I'm trying to say here is that when you get our telescope, you get improvement over time. The image quality gets better. There is new mode added, new scientific mode. We can now observe satellites. It's going to be soon an official mode of the telescope.
That's exciting. And I understand there's an asteroid out there with your name on it.
Yes. Yeah, which number? I always forget the number. 4426 or 4436, Marchis. That's an amateur astronomer chose my name for this asteroid because I discovered the first asteroid with moons in 2005. Using a 8-meter class telescope, we discovered 2 moons, tiny moons in orbit around an asteroid, a large 120-kilometer asteroid called Sylvia. And this was kind of unknown at the time. And also theories keep telling us that it was impossible to have such a system. So that's one of the reasons I keep looking for them, because if you tell me something is impossible and you're a theorist, as an observer, the first thing I will do is to make sure that you're wrong, and we'll be looking for it until I find one. So we found these moons, Romulus and Remus, I named them, orbiting around Sylvia, the mother Rhea Sylvia, in the main belt.
Very, very cool. So if people are thinking about a telescope and this new generation of telescopes, unlike, what we've had traditionally for all the years, what are the key differences between the traditional, I guess, optical telescope that so many of us grew up with and what you have today?
It's easier to use. I mean, you probably have a telescope, or you have tried to observe with a traditional telescope. The pointing is cumbersome, is complicated. And then you try to point to a galaxy and you see a faint, blurry red, gray dot, and you're not 100% sure you're pointing to the right place. I do have this experience myself, and it's very frustrating for a lot of people. So that's the reason a lot of people give up on astronomy, in fact. These digital telescopes, ours and others, they make finally astronomy accessible. It's like the iPhone of astronomy, basically. It's you unpack it, you use it. Yeah, it can take maybe 1 hour, but you should be able to observe a galaxy and a nebulae in less than 1 hour. So you have the joy and the understanding of what you're observing as well, because it provides information at the same time. You're not isolated alone with your telescope. You are connected with a phone, so you can also share your images with people. You can also participate to star parties. So we're trying to make astronomy more inclusive in the lifetime of people. I mean, you can watch Netflix tonight, but it's clear you can also use your telescope to enjoy observing the comet, Chuchinchan Atlas, which is right now visible. And you can have the same kind of excitement, or even better, if you observe a comet than if you watch a Netflix show. So we're trying to make astronomy a lifestyle, part of the life of people. Most people don't have 4 or 5 hours to spend per night aligning, calibrating the telescope. Most people have family and busy life, so they want to be able to do something more easily. So we provided this easiness basically with these digital telescopes. And the fact that the data are digital and shareable made the experience as well more social. I mean, you can share the data, as I mentioned, and you can also do meaningful observations. So you can do scientific research as well with the telescope.
Just terrific. And for more info, the place to go is Unistellar, unistellar.com. Franck Marchis, thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you very much for having me.